On our 5th wedding anniversary, I dressed to the nines, waiting for my CEO wife, Lilian, to announce our secret marriage at the banquet. But her crush, the top star Joseph, suddenly became the center of attention after a midnight scandal broke out, rumors of him having an affair with a young model. Under the blinding flash of cameras, Lilian held the microphone. She ignored my expectant gaze from the audience, and she ignored our 5-year marriage. Without any regard for my feelings, she looked straight into the cameras and, word by word, announced clearly, "Joseph and I are indeed in love. I hope everyone can support his new project." The moment she finished, the hall erupted, gasps first, then thunderous applause and cheers. Amid the roaring excitement, Joseph rushed onto the stage, pulled Lilian into his arms, and kissed her passionately under the spotlight. I became the most ridiculous spectator in the room. Around me, guests were buzzing with excitement about how perfect this golden couple was, completely unaware that the woman they called his fated match already had a legal husband, sitting right among them. It felt like an invisible hand had gripped my heart tight, suffocating me in an instant. But I didn't cry. I didn't lose control. I simply watched the pair on stage, radiant, embraced, and then, smiling faintly, joined the crowd of gossip-hungry onlookers. Together with them, I clapped, offering the most sincere blessings I could muster. The applause was crisp, rhythmic. Perhaps startled by that distinct sound, Lilian pushed Joseph away and looked through the crowd toward me. There was a flicker of surprise in her eyes, maybe even a trace of guilt. She probably thought I'd explode in anger, storm the stage, demand an explanation. Unfortunately for her, I didn't. I simply raised my glass toward her, deepened my smile, and drained it in one go. Then, amid the thunderous cheers and blessings, I turned and walked out, for good. Lilian, from the moment you decided to use our marriage as a stepping stone for your lover's career, there was nothing left between us but a reckoning. When I returned to our shared home, the penthouse overlooking the city's glittering skyline, I didn't, as usual, leave a light on for her. Instead, I began to pack my things, slowly, deliberately. My clothes, my books, the computer I'd used for 5 years, even the few potted plants I had nurtured myself. For 5 years, I gave up an offer from a top AI lab overseas for Lilian. I willingly became the man behind her success. She handled the outside world, founding what is now the billion-dollar Lumina Group. I handled everything else, her quiet supporter, her strongest shield. The world praised her as a once-in-a-century business prodigy. No one knew that behind every key decision, every crisis that Lumina overcame, stood me. I, Luis, was the true pillar of Lumina Group. I loved her enough to hide all my brilliance, to give her every bit of credit, to let her shine in the spotlight. I thought she understood my devotion. I thought that 5 years of sharing our lives would outweigh the faint memory of a long-lost youthful romance. It wasn't until tonight that I finally realized I was wrong. In her heart, I was probably just a functional partner, someone who could provide warmth and support when she needed it, but also someone who could be discarded without hesitation whenever her crush needed her more. How utterly laughable. Around midnight, Lilian came home. She'd clearly had a few drinks. A faint blush colored her cheeks when her eyes fell on the suitcases by my feet. Something flickered in her gaze. "Luis, what are you doing?" she asked, her tone slightly accusatory, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. "As you can see, moving out." I closed the last suitcase and answered flatly. Her brows furrowed as she stepped closer, the faint scent of another man's cologne lingering on her. "All this because of what happened tonight, Luis. Can you please be more mature?" Joseph was being slandered by competitors. I had to step up and clarify things for him. It was the most effective PR strategy. "We're husband and wife. You should understand me, support me." Looking at her so self-righteous, I couldn't help but laugh softly. "I do understand, and I've always supported you. That's why I was clapping the loudest in the audience tonight." I brushed the dust off my palms and stood. "So, to avoid interfering with your romance with superstar Joseph, I'll move out voluntarily, give you space. Tell me, isn't that mature enough?" Lilian's face finally changed. She probably didn't expect that the men who'd always indulged her would speak with such cutting sarcasm. "Luis, don't be unreasonable." She took a deep breath, her tone softening. "I know you're hurt. How about this? The villa in the West District will be transferred to your name tomorrow. And here's a card, 50 million. The password's your birthday. Consider it compensation." She pulled a black card from her bag, holding it out to me like she was dismissing a disobedient subordinate. Compensation. So that's what 5 years of marriage meant to her, a price tag. I looked at the card and smiled. "All right." I took the card. Then, right before her eyes, bent it slowly. The sharp crack of plastic breaking echoed through the silent living room. "Lilian, there's no need for compensation between us." I tossed the two halves of the card onto the coffee table. "I'll leave with nothing." Then I grabbed my suitcase and walked toward the door without looking back. "Luis." Lilian's voice trembled slightly, tinged with panic. "What do you want from me?" I stopped, Still not turning around. Lilian, tomorrow morning at 9, outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. I hope you'll be on time. The door slammed shut behind me, cutting off every sound from her world. The moment I stepped out, I was no longer the nameless man behind the CEO of Lumina. I was Luis, and I was back. The next morning, I waited outside the Civil Affairs Bureau for an hour. Lilian never came. Instead, her chief lawyer, Angelica, arrived. Angelica had been our senior back in university, a gold medal attorney known for her composure and professionalism. Today, she wore a crisp black suit, pushed up her golden-rimmed glasses, and handed me a document. Luis, she said calmly, the president has an important international meeting today. She couldn't make it. This is the divorce agreement she asked me to deliver. I took the divorce agreement and flipped through it quickly. The terms looked generous on paper. In addition to the villa and the $50 million she'd mentioned last night, there was even a small bonus, 0.5% of Lumina Group's shares, but the fine print came with a heavy price. I had to sign an extremely strict non-disclosure agreement, promising never to reveal that Lilian and I had ever been married. If I did, I'd face an astronomical penalty. She really thought of everything, didn't she? I closed the document and gave a bitter laugh. With these crumbs, she thought she could buy off 5 years of my devotion and lock me into silence for life. Luis, the president only did this for your own good, Angelica said calmly, her tone purely professional. She's a public figure now. Any negative rumor could affect the company's stock price. For my own good. I looked up at her, eyes cold. Then tell me, Angelica, do you know who built the Apocalypse AI system that Lumina's entire empire relies on? She froze. Do you know who stayed awake for 7 straight days and nights, crafting the perfect counter-strategy when Wall Street sharks tried to acquire Lumina 3 years ago? Angelica's composure began to waver. Do you know who provided the terrifyingly precise data analytics and market predictions behind every single one of her so-called brilliant business expansions? With every question, Angelica's face turned paler. Those were Lumina's deepest secrets, things no outsider should ever know. Only Lilian and I did. She took everything from me, my mind, my work, my 5 years of life, and turned me into a secret she'd rather erase. I tore the agreement into shreds, the paper scattering into the trash can like snow. And now she wants to buy me off with crumbs. Attorney Angelica, tell Lilian this, I'll divorce her. Yes, but not under these humiliating terms. What belongs to me, I said quietly, I'll take back with my own hands, one piece at a time. Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked away. When I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I didn't go home. Instead, I went straight to my company, StarTech Innovations. A week ago, when I began noticing Lilian and Joseph getting closer, I knew this day would come sooner or later. I'd paved Lilian's path for 5 years. Now it was time to build my own. StarTech's office wasn't large, just a small, bright workspace with a handful of people, all trusted partners from my university days. The moment I arrived, Tubby, our lead engineer, came running over, eyes gleaming. Boss, you're finally here. The prototype of the Singularity system is live. Singularity, my masterpiece, the next-generation AI interaction system I had been secretly developing for 2 years in my spare time. It was at least a full generation ahead of Lumina's Apocalypse system. Originally, it was meant to be my ultimate gift to Lilian, a 10-year technological leap that would secure our company's dominance. But now, it would become the first weapon I'd use to bring that empire down. Show me the data, I said. I sat before the computer, my fingers flying over the keyboard. Lines of code streamed across the screen like a river of fire. These were the same hands that had once built Lilian's empire. Now, they would be the ones to bury it. For the next week, I practically lived in the office. My team and I poured every waking hour into final optimizations and testing for the Singularity system. Meanwhile, Lilian seemed to have finally realized what she had lost that night. She began calling me, texting me. At first, her tone was commanding. Luis, enough of this tantrum. Come back. Don't make things harder for me. When I didn't respond, her tone softened. She started playing the emotional card. Luis, I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you that way, but you have to understand me. Joseph, he was my dream when I was young. I just wanted to fulfill that dream. Doesn't our 5 years together mean anything to you? Just give me a little more time. Once Joseph's new movie is released and everything settles, I'll handle things properly. Handle things. How? By keeping Joseph as her secret lover, or by keeping me as the invisible husband no one was allowed to know about. I didn't reply to a single message. My silence must have scared her, because soon she started waiting outside my company, bringing me food, gifts, all the things I used to like. But every single thing she brought only reminded me how pathetic those 5 years had been. That night, just as my team and I finished the final test of Singularity and walked out of the building, I saw a familiar Bentley parked by the curb. Lilian was leaning against the car, looking pale and exhausted. The moment she saw me, she rushed over and grabbed my arm. Luis, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. I tried to pull away. No, listen to me, she said desperately, clutching my arm tighter, her eyes shimmering with tears. It's not what you think between Joseph and me. Whatever you two are, it has nothing to do with me. My voice was cold. Lilian, please have some dignity. Don't ruin my company's image. Your company? Lilian froze for a moment, then gave a bitter laugh. Luis, stop this nonsense and come home. How long do you think your savings will last? Without me, you're nothing. That was her truest thought, the naked arrogance behind the polished CEO mask. In her eyes, I had always been nothing more than a parasite clinging to her light. Lilian, I said, locking eyes with her, my voice steady and sharp, soon, you'll see, without me, you're the one who's nothing. I yanked my arm free, turned, and got into another car with my team, leaving her standing there under the streetlights. In the rearview mirror, her figure grew smaller and smaller, lonely, fragile. Once upon a time, that sight would have shattered me. Now, my heart was still as stone. 2 days later, StarTech Innovations held a small but highly influential product launch. We officially unveiled the Singularity Artificial Intelligence System. As I stood on stage, personally demonstrating Singularity's revolutionary capabilities, each feature eclipsing Apocalypse in precision, adaptability, and real-time decision-making, the audience erupted. Representatives from more than a dozen top domestic and international investment firms were on their feet, whispering excitedly, applauding wildly. By the time the press conference ended, my desk was buried under investment proposals, and that was only the beginning. Overnight, StarTech Innovations became a sensation. Its valuation skyrocketed. I, Luis, was no longer the man behind Lilian. I was a rising star in the tech world, and this was only the beginning. The sudden rise of StarTech Innovations sent shockwaves through the entire industry, and the biggest impact, of course, landed squarely on Lumina Group. The Apocalypse system had always been Lumina's crown jewel, the cornerstone of its multi-billion valuation. Now, with the debut of Singularity, it was as if a razor-sharp blade had been thrust straight into Lumina's heart. Within 3 days, Lumina's stock price plummeted, wiping out nearly $3 billion in market value. The board was in chaos, pressure mounting from every direction, all of it aimed at Lilian. I could almost picture her, pacing her glass-walled office, perfectly manicured fingers trembling over her phone, the empire she had built cracking beneath her heels. And sure enough, the call came. Her voice was laced with exhaustion, disbelief, and a hint of desperation. Luis, it was you, wasn't it? Singularity, you made it. Yes, I didn't bother denying it. There was silence on the other end, long, heavy. Then came her voice again, trembling with barely contained fury. Why are you doing this? Do you want to destroy Lumina? Destroy me? Will that finally make you happy? I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. I'm simply taking back what's mine. Yours, Luis. Don't forget, you were my husband. What's yours is mine. This is betrayal. I laughed softly. Lilian, when I watched you kiss another man on stage, when you told the world he was your lover, tell me, who betrayed whom first? That's different. That was just. There's no just about it. I cut her off. You sacrificed me for your crush. So tell me, why can't I fight for my own future? Even if it costs you your empire. Business is war. Lilian, that's what you taught me. Did you forget? And with that, I ended the call. I knew that single conversation had shattered the last of her illusions. She finally understood. I wasn't acting out of anger. This was war. From that moment on, Lilian unleashed everything she had against StarTech. She used her vast network to choke our supply chain, poach our top engineers, and even spread rumors that Singularity was built from stolen Lumina trade secrets. Within a week, StarTech Innovations was under siege from all sides. Investors hesitated, suppliers backed out, the media turned cold. We were surrounded. But this time, I wasn't the man hiding in the shadows behind her. I was the man standing in the storm, facing her head-on. My team was starting to panic. Boss, what do we do now? Tubby burst into my office, drenched in sweat. Several investors have pulled out, and 2 suppliers just breached their contracts. I remained perfectly calm. What are you panicking for? Everything she can do, I can do, and everything she can't, I'll do better. For 5 years, I had built an intricate web of business connections for Lilian. Now, it was time for that web to serve me. That evening, I arranged to meet someone Lilian would never expect, Mr. Wang, Lumina Group's second-largest shareholder and her longtime rival, a man who had always coveted the CEO seat. We met in a quiet, private tea house. I slid a folder across the table toward him. Mr. Wang, I said evenly, inside are records of every illegal transaction Lumina has made over the past 3 years, along with detailed proof that Lilian used her position to funnel corporate benefits to Joseph's studio. Mr. Wang's eyes lit up instantly. He stared at me as though I were some kind of monster. How did you get all this? Who I am doesn't matter, I replied. What matters is, can this help you get the position you've always wanted? He narrowed his eyes. What do you want from me? I want you to call for a vote of no confidence against Lilian at the next board meeting. After she's gone, StarTech Innovations will form a strategic alliance with the new Lumina Group. He frowned. And why should I trust you? Because, I said with a faint smile, pressing a button on the small projector beside me. A holographic projection appeared on the wall, the core architecture of Singularity's second generation. Because Singularity will always be one generation ahead of Apocalypse. Mr. Wang's breathing quickened. He understood, this was his only chance. His best chance. Fine, he said, grinning like a wolf. I'm in. Everything unfolded exactly as I had planned. 3 days later, Lumina Group held an emergency board meeting. In the middle of the session, Mr. Wang suddenly struck. He slammed the evidence I'd given him onto the table. The room exploded into chaos. Embezzlement, conflict of interest, abuse of power, stock value lost due to poor decision-making. Each accusation was damning enough to strip Lilian of her title on the spot. She sat frozen, her face drained of all color. She never expected that her most trusted lieutenant would turn on her at the critical moment, delivering a fatal blow. And even more so, she could never have imagined that the mastermind behind it all was the man she once dismissed as insignificant, the husband she'd betrayed. As the board prepared to vote on her dismissal, the conference room doors suddenly burst open. Everyone turned in shock. Walking in was Angelica, but this time, she wasn't here as Lilian's lawyer. Without hesitation, she strode to Lilian's side, faced the board, and spoke in a clear, commanding voice. Before you make your decision, gentlemen, I'd like you to take a look at something. She set her laptop on the table and connected it to the projector. On the screen appeared a share transfer agreement. 3 months ago, Lilian had already transferred 20% of her Lumina shares to her husband, Mr. Luis. At the same time, they were never secretly married. In fact, they registered their marriage in the US 5 years ago. From the very beginning of Lumina Group's establishment, they had also completed a prenuptial notarization. The document clearly states that Lumina Group is marital property jointly owned by the couple, and Mr. Luis holds half of the decision-making and profit rights. The reason why the president never made this public is because Luis is deeply devoted to technological research and dislikes social interaction. The entire room fell into utter silence. Everyone, including Vice President Wang, was completely stunned. I froze as well. I had never known that such an agreement even existed. What exactly is Lilian trying to do? As for Vice President Wang's accusation of so-called interest transfer, Angelica turned her gaze toward the pale-faced Wang. The investment in Joseph's studio was approved by Luis himself. It was a normal entertainment industry investment under the group. Here is his handwritten authorization. On the screen appeared a document. At the bottom right corner was my signature. The handwriting was identical to mine. Suddenly, I remembered. Half a year ago, Lilian had indeed asked me to sign a document. She said it was for investing in a promising young art film director. I hadn't thought much about it, and I signed. Turns out, that new director was Joseph. She had been planning all of this since then. So, dear board members, Angelica's voice was calm yet powerful. President Lilian and Mr. Luis are the true owners of Lumina Group. What you did today could be regarded as a malicious attempt to usurp the company's management rights. We reserve the right to pursue legal action. In an instant, the situation reversed completely. Vice President Wang's carefully plotted coup became a total joke. He slumped into his chair, face ashen. Meanwhile, Lilian slowly stood up, her gaze piercing through the screen, as if looking directly at me from the other side. In her eyes, there was no trace of triumph, only deep sorrow and finality. She had won, in a way I never could have imagined. She had secured her position. She was not some impulsive, love-blinded woman. She was far more complex, and far more ruthless, than I ever thought. She had calculated everything, me, Joseph, and even the entire board. At that moment, I finally understood. That public announcement, that seemingly foolish act of sacrifice, perhaps it had been a setup all along. A trap meant to draw me out and see just how many cards I still held. I turned off the remote feed. Inside the office, Tubby and the rest of the team stared at each other in disbelief. Boss, what's going on? Lilian, she wasn't just some love-struck fool. Yeah, everyone had thought she'd lost her head over a man. But now it's clear, she was the most clear-headed of us all. She had used what looked like an out-of-control PR crisis to precisely test 3 things. First, the markets and the public's acceptance of her relationship with Joseph. Second, within the board, who were her allies and who were her enemies? Who would jump out the moment she appeared to be in trouble? Third, and most importantly, she tested me, Luis, her seemingly harmless husband, to see how much influence I truly had and how many secret cards I still kept hidden. The results were clear. Vice President Wang took the bait and got completely ensnared. And I, too, stepped out, exposing my biggest trump cards, StarTech Innovations and Singularity. She had even exploited my trust in her, forging the so-called investment authorization in advance to make everything look perfectly legal. A brilliant move, 1 stone, 3 birds, and a trap to lure the snake from its hole. This woman was far more terrifying than I had imagined, and instead of feeling defeated, I felt a surge of long-lost excitement rise within me. Now this is interesting. If Lilian had truly been nothing more than a foolish woman blinded by love, then winning this battle would have been utterly tasteless. Tubby. I turned around, a smile curling back onto my lips. Spread the word, Plan B. Activate. Tubby's eyes lit up. Boss, you actually have a Plan B? Of course. I looked out the window at the towering Lumina Group building. She wants to play. Then I'll play with her, to the very end. The game, I said softly, is only just beginning. Lilian's counterattack came swiftly. After the turmoil in the boardroom had settled, she immediately filed a petition with the court, invoking marital joint property rights, requesting to freeze all assets of StarTech Innovations and demanding that I hand over full ownership of the Singularity system. Her argument was flawless. Singularity was developed during our marriage and therefore should be considered joint marital property, which, by extension, belonged to Lumina Group. She was trying to corner me completely. Angelica, acting as her legal representative, came to see me again. This time, there was something different in her eyes, a trace of conflict. Luis, stop this, she said quietly. You can't win against her, senior. I poured her a cup of tea. In your eyes, am I now an ungrateful fool who doesn't know his limits? Angelica remained silent. I understand. I smiled faintly. You're her best friend. It's natural for you to stand by her side. But I still want to ask you one thing. As a top-tier lawyer, do you truly believe that everything she's done stands on solid ground, legally and morally? Angelica's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. That prenuptial notarization, is it real? That share transfer, did it actually happen? I fixed my gaze firmly on her. Angelica looked away. These are the materials my client provided me, she said finally, her voice dry and hesitant. My duty is only to secure the best possible outcome for her, within the bounds of the law. I understood. All of it, the documents, the transfers, the notarization, they were fake. Lilian had them forged overnight by Angelica, just to handle the board's crisis. And Angelica, even knowing they were fake, still chose to help her, just because they were best friends. Attorney Angelica. I stood up, clearly signaling that the meeting was over. Then I suppose I'll see you in court. I just hope you won't regret the choice you made today. After seeing Angelica off, I dialed an international number. Professor, it's me, Luis. I need your help. On the other end came the familiar, gruff voice of my old mentor, a titan in the global field of artificial intelligence, a man of immense reputation and backed by one of the strongest legal teams in the world. Years ago, I had given up his invitation to build Lumina with Lilian. He had been so furious he nearly disowned me. You still remember you have a teacher, do you? Tell me, which woman fooled you this time? I gave a bitter smile. So, you've heard? You stirred up such a storm. How could I not hear? That woman, Lilian, I've looked into her. She's capable, but her morals are rotten. You must have been blind back then. Professor, I need your help to prove that the core algorithm of the Singularity system originated from the paper we co-published 3 years ago, and that all startup capital for StarTech Innovations came from my premarital patent royalties. That's it. He scoffed. I thought it was something serious. Don't worry, I already had my team prepare the full chain of evidence for you. Let's show them what true professionalism looks like. He paused, then chuckled. Oh, and I've got a little gift for you. A gift? You'll know when the time comes. But listen, brat, if you lose again this time, don't you dare call yourself my student. When the call ended, I felt a deep sense of calm settle over me. Lilian, you think the law is clay you can shape however you please? You're wrong. The law only serves evidence. The day of the hearing arrived. Lilian appeared in person. She wore a white suit, pristine, regal, and as coldly untouchable as ever. The courthouse entrance was swarming with reporters. Lumina president couple at war. Billion-dollar empire in jeopardy. The battle for control. Each headline was a bomb waiting to explode across the internet. Joseph was there too, hidden in the corner of the audience seats, sunglasses and mask on, silently offering her his support. The trial began. Angelica, serving as Lilian's attorney, made the first move. She presented the forged share transfer agreement and the so-called marital property notarization. Her reasoning was airtight, her tone confident. The Singularity system, she argued, should rightfully belong to Lumina Group. Everything seemed to be going perfectly in Lilian's favor. Then it was my turn. I hadn't hired a lawyer. I chose to stand at the defense podium myself, looking directly at Angelica. I asked my first question. Attorney Angelica, the property notarization you submitted, the one supposedly handled in the United States, was it processed by the Federal Notary Office of the United States? Angelica froze for a second, caught off guard, before replying, yes. Then please tell me, Attorney Angelica, I continued, my tone calm but cutting. Are you aware that there is no such thing as a federal notary office in the United States? All notarizations are independently conducted by notaries authorized by individual state governments. Angelica's face turned deathly pale. She had made a fatal, rookie mistake, the kind that even a first-year law student wouldn't commit. Perhaps she was in too much of a rush. Perhaps she never saw me as a real opponent who understood the system. Either way, the document she had forged contained a gaping, irreparable flaw. This must be a translation error, she stammered, her voice trembling. Translation error? I smiled coldly. Then I suppose this letter of certification, personally issued by my mentor, Professor Rogers, the acting chairman of the World Artificial Intelligence Association, shouldn't have any translation issues, right? I presented my evidence to the court, a comprehensive technical lineage chart, clearly demonstrating that the core algorithm of singularity originated directly from the research Professor Rogers and I had published 3 years ago, an independent work with its own intellectual property rights, and alongside it, the complete financial records of StarTech Innovations. Every transaction traceable back to my personal bank account, established before my marriage to Lilian. The evidence was irrefutable, a mountain of proof. Angelica's carefully constructed web of lies collapsed instantly before the weight of hard facts. The judge ruled on the spot. All of Lilian's claims were dismissed. Furthermore, an investigation was to be launched into Angelica for submitting falsified evidence. Angelica slumped into her seat, eyes hollow. Her career, likely over. I turned to look at Lilian. She still sat upright, proud as ever, but her tightly clenched fists betrayed the turmoil behind that mask of composure. She had lost her first battle, but this wasn't over. Not yet. After the hearing, I didn't leave immediately. Instead, I stopped Joseph, who was quietly trying to slip out the side door. Mr. Joseph, I said, no need to rush off. His body stiffened. He turned around, eyes flickering nervously. What do you want? Nothing much. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Just a friendly reminder, Lilian won't be able to protect herself for much longer. That film of yours, the one she poured money into to make happen, without her backing. You won't even have funds for post-production or distribution. You might want to start looking for another investor. Joseph's face twisted in anger and panic. I patted his shoulder, smiled, and walked away. I knew exactly what I'd done. That tiny seed of doubt I had just planted, it would soon take root, grow, and consume him. Joseph was a textbook opportunist, a refined self-serving type, the kind who'd never risk his future for anyone else. Soon, he'd abandon Lilian, just like everyone else would. I wanted her to taste it. The bitterness of isolation, the feeling of being betrayed by everyone she trusted. The court's verdict became the final straw that broke the camel's back. Lumina Group's stock plummeted once again. The board lost all patience. They bypassed Lilian entirely and came straight to me. Their offer was tempting. If I agreed to merge StarTech Innovations with Lumina, they would immediately remove Lilian from office and appoint me as the new chairman of the merged company. I refused. Lumina is an old ship, I told Vice President Wang, who came to negotiate. Too old. Too filthy. I don't want my singularity contaminated by that decay. My goal has never been to become another Lilian, or to replace her. What I want is to build something entirely new, a commercial empire that belongs to me. Luis. Vice President Wang and his entourage left disappointed, unable to comprehend. They didn't realize that my vision had already outgrown Lumina's small, rotting pond. My ambition wasn't confined to one company. I was aiming for the stars, and the sea beyond them, and Lilian. After the humiliating defeat in court and the disastrous plunge of her company's stock, finally let go of all her pride and pretense. For the first time, she came to my small, modest office on her own. She wasn't wearing any of those expensive suits anymore, just a plain white shirt and a pair of jeans. No makeup, her face bare and pale, looking utterly exhausted and helpless. Luis, can we stop fighting? She said hoarsely, eyes red and swollen. I surrender. I'll give Lumina to you. I don't want anything anymore. Let's go back to the way we were, please. She cried. Tears streamed down like broken pearls, one after another. It was the first time in 5 years that I had seen her cry so bitterly. If it had been in the past, I would have been heartbroken beyond words, holding her tightly in my arms, trying to shield her from the world. But now, my heart was as hard as stone. Lilian, do you really think we can go back? I asked quietly, looking straight at her. We can. I know we can, she said urgently. I was blinded by ambition. I was wrong. I shouldn't have tested you. Shouldn't have used you. I know I broke your heart, but please, give me one more chance. Just one last chance. I'll make it right. I promise I will. Make it right. I interrupted, my voice calm but cold. You mean using those tricks you thought I didn't know about? The ones meant to trap me and turn me into your obedient accessory? Lilian's body stiffened. She stared at me in disbelief. What do you know? I know far more than you think. I opened a drawer and took something out. A voice recorder. I pressed the play button. From the speaker came Lilian and Angelica's voices. It was their conversation in the office after the chaos at the board meeting. Lilian's voice carried fatigue and pride. Luis is still too naive. He thought he hid everything so well, but in the end, I forced him to show all his cards. Angelica sounded hesitant. Lilian, isn't this too cruel? After all, Lilian sneered. Cruel. He betrayed me first. He secretly built up that whole StarTech Innovations just to start his own empire. I saw it coming. Better to strike first than wait for him to grow strong enough to replace me. When I merge Chuangxing and Singularity into Lumina, his wings will be clipped. Then he'll have no choice but to come back to me, obediently. Like before, I can't live without his talent, but I'll never tolerate his betrayal. As for Joseph, he's just a pawn. Someone to provoke Luis, and to keep the shareholders quiet. Once this is over, I'll pay him off and send him away. A man who can be useful to me, that's the only kind of man worth keeping. When the recording ended, the office fell into a heavy, deathly silence. Lilian's face had gone completely pale, drained of every trace of color. Her lips trembled as she looked at me, as if she were staring at a demon. When did you? From the day I decided to move out, I said quietly. I placed it inside the potted plant in your office. I just wanted to know what I really meant to you. The result, I added with a cold smile, was impressive. That was my true trump card, not the Singularity system, not my mentor's network. It was this, my final exploration into who she really was. If there had been even a shred of genuine affection left in her heart for me, perhaps I wouldn't have gone this far, but the words in that recording crushed the last fragment of hope I had. To her, I was not a lover, not even family, just a talented tool, something to be tightly controlled and used. Her so-called love was nothing but a twisted blend of manipulation, fear, and possessiveness. Her love was cheap, so cheap it was nauseating. Lilian finally broke down. She lunged toward me, trying to grab the recorder, but I dodged her effortlessly. She fell to the floor, letting out a desperate wail. Luis, why are you doing this to me? I was just so afraid of losing you, she cried incoherently, voice cracking. I love you. Everything I did was because I love you. Love? I looked down at her, my eyes void of any warmth. Your kind of love means clipping my wings and locking me up in your golden cage. Lilian, stop pretending. The only person you've ever loved is yourself, your power, your empire, your desire to control. I put the recorder away. This recording will never go public. Not for your sake, but because it's filthy. And I don't want your Lumina either. I just want to watch the empire you built with your own hands collapse, bit by bit. What are you planning to do? Lilian looked up, terrified. I smiled. Remember when my professor said he wanted to give me a gift? That gift just arrived. I turned my phone screen toward her. On it was a breaking international news alert. Breaking news. Wall Street's Abyss Capital officially announces a hostile takeover of Lumina Group in Country H. Abyss Capital, Lilian muttered, her eyes losing all light. She knew that name all too well. 3 years ago, that same Wall Street giant had nearly swallowed the newly founded Lumina whole. And it was me, who fought for 7 sleepless days and nights to save her company from destruction. But now, they had returned. And the men who once shielded her from everything now stood on the opposite side, watching her despair, smiling. Why would Professor Rogers do this? Lilian collapsed, unable to comprehend. Because 3 years ago, the real owner of Abyss Capital was one of Professor Rogers' brightest students, my senior. They split apart over academic and business ideologies. The professor always believed that I had blocked my senior's path, leaving him resentful. So this time, his condition for helping me was simple. He forbade me from interfering in the conflict between Lumina and Abyss Capital. He called it an internal cleansing between his disciples. Told me to stay out of it, and I would. Not only would I stay out of it, I would add fuel to the fire. I tossed a document onto the table in front of Lilian. It was the Strategic Cooperation Agreement between StarTech Innovations and Glory Technologies, the largest tech conglomerate in Europe. Together, we would co-develop the next-generation global IoT-based intelligent ecosystem. While you're busy wrestling with Abyss Capital, I said calmly, I'll be taking over all your overseas markets. When your cash flow collapses and you're drowning in crisis, your shareholders will smell the blood in the water, like sharks, and they'll tear you apart. And as for your crush, I pulled out another folder. These are the records of Joseph's tax evasion and his multiple affairs with other actresses. Oh, and by the way, the whistleblower, it's his most trusted agent. I was the one who helped that agent find a better employer. Lilian's entire body trembled violently, cutting off her resources, striking her when she's down, turning her allies against her. I had returned to her every single tactic she once used on others, untouched and unaltered. Lilian, I said softly, enjoy the bitter fruit of your own making. I turned and walked out of the office, leaving her desperate cries fading behind me. The ending was already written. Ending, perfect. Everything unfolded exactly as I predicted, or perhaps, even more dramatically. Abyss Capital's assault was ruthless and precise. The Lumina Group was forced into retreat after retreat. Lilian tried to fight back, but without me, her so-called external brain, she was overwhelmed. Her decisions grew desperate, reckless, accelerating the company's downfall. Then came Joseph's scandal, an explosion that shook the entire entertainment industry. Tax evasion, chaotic private life. Within hours, he fell from his pedestal as a top celebrity and became a national disgrace. A rat that everyone wanted to beat. He not only faced massive fines and compensation claims, but possibly prison time. Driven to the edge, Joseph did something insane. He released a video, crying, trembling, confessing. He accused Lilian of manipulation and coercion, claiming she had promised him investment in exchange for playing a fake romance to provoke her husband. He even exposed her darker secrets, illegal deals she'd made to crush her business rivals. The video was the final blow. Public opinion flipped overnight. Lilian, the once glamorous CEO who had been painted as a victim, was now seen as a scheming, manipulative woman who used people like disposable pawns. Lumina's reputation was destroyed. Its stock plummeted to the bottom. And finally, Abyss Capital bought it for a fraction of its former worth. Lilian's era was over. She lost everything. Her company, her reputation, her fortune. Even her best friend, Angelica, was convicted of evidence fabrication. Disbarred and ruined for life, Lilian had become utterly alone. 6 months later, I appeared on the cover of a financial magazine. The headline read, StarTech Innovations, the Eastern Power opening a new era of smart technology. After partnering with Glory Technologies, my company went public. Its valuation soaring sky high, a new unicorn rising in the global tech scene. That evening, at a charity gala, I saw a figure in the parking lot, both familiar and unfamiliar. It was Lilian. She was wearing the plainest of clothes, working as a waitress in a high-end restaurant. A drunk customer was harassing her. He poured wine right onto her face. She didn't resist. She just bowed her head and silently endured it. The woman who once ruled like a queen had now fallen into the dust, humiliated and forgotten. Then she saw me. Her eyes flickered with a storm of emotions, resentment, regret, but above all, numbness and despair. I didn't step forward. I simply stood there, calm and unmoved. My assistant leaned toward me. President, do you want me to handle that? I shook my head. No need. Let's go. I got into the car without looking back. Toward Lilian, there was no love left in me. No hatred either. Her fate was her own retribution. It had nothing to do with me anymore. I wouldn't play the saint and pity her. Nor would I feel any hollow satisfaction from revenge, because my goal was never merely vengeance. My goal was the stars and the sea, to build a future that truly belonged to me. My phone lit up with a new message. It was from Tubby. Boss, you ditched the celebration party again. Everyone's waiting for you. Oh, and I just saw the news. Joseph got sentenced. 3 years. Justice served. I smiled and typed back. On my way. Outside the car window, the city lights shimmered like a river of stars. My new life had only just begun, and the feeling of finally being in control of my destiny was absolutely exhilarating.